Hi everyone, I'm Lorraine Driscoll, and this is another episode of Building Better Brains, where each week I talk about the root cause of why your child might be struggling with learning, reading, and behavior. Today I want to veer a teeny bit off course in terms of learning, reading, and behavior, not totally, because I want to talk about the immune system, and while that might seem totally unrelated to the brain, that is the entire problem with the way we still view the body from a Newtonian perspective, that it's a bunch of parts running like a machine when in fact it's not. And I'm very familiar with how the immune system affects the brain as well as other parts of the body because of my daughter's own experience when she was younger with PANS or PANDAS, which is a neuroimmune condition in which the immune system starts attacking the brain. Because certain infections cause the immune system to dysregulate and so forth. And this can happen with any infection. So I really wasn't surprised when I heard that with COVID-19, as well as during the Spanish flu and pandemics in general, that there is an increase in psychiatric symptoms, mental health issues, and so forth with people who either have an active infection or after they've had the infection. And so the first thing I want to dive into that I feel frustrated with is I want to just actually mention, I feel frustrated because what happened several weeks ago was someone kind of attacked, for lack of a better word, attacked me on Facebook saying that I wasn't taking this illness seriously enough because I stated that I wasn't really overly concerned. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be concerned. I think how we are all feeling is really valid, but I feel very comfortable with my knowledge in how to nourish the immune system and support and so forth, because of the experience I had with my daughter and because of my training in nutrition and gut health and so forth. And the one thing that I was really frustrated with is that, and this is what I was trying to explain on Facebook, is that we are not talking about why the immune system has changed, basically. And we know that, pandemics can happen regardless. And I want to be very clear before I go into anything, this is not about shame or blame or what you're not doing or whatever. But we're not talking about how the immune system, what can cause the immune system to dysregulate. I mentioned in a blog that we're not talking about why heart disease, which is practically non-existent at the turn of the 19th century, as well as diabetes, was practically non-existent. And now it's such an epidemic that it's even occurring among children. And so we need to talk about why our immune system is weak. And I got thinking about what are we not looking at whenever these COVID patients are in the hospitals. And I thought, I wonder if the doctors are looking at, the nutritional status of these patients. Are they looking at their vitamin C levels, their zinc levels, all those nutrients that are really critical for proper immune function? And what's really interesting is that what came out is that some of the nutrients that doctors were using both in the US as well as China and other places, who were kind of branching out and trying other options because nothing was working, were vitamin C, zinc, in particular. And those, among others, are immune nutrients or nutrients that support the immune system and other processes, either directly or inadvertently. And those very nutrients tend to be the ones that, as a culture, we tend to be particularly deficient in. So I think that, we really need to look at that and dive into that and ask ourselves why that is not part of our approach whenever we're addressing whether it's flu season, pandemics, and so forth. So I'm going to just touch on it a little bit. I'm going to touch on a few nutrients. I do want to mention before I get into the nutrients that if you hop onto my website, www.lorrainedriscoll.com, I'll post the link in the comments below. You can find what foods to eat to get those nutrients and more detailed information, because I don't want to go into too much detail and bore people half to death. But vitamin C is one that's made headlines and has been kind of almost controversial because, there's been issues with vitamin C, saying people claiming it doesn't work as a cure and other people saying yes, it does. So I really dove into that and actually found the studies from the chief medical doctor at Shanghai Hospital who was using intravenous vitamin C. And I think next to no patients died whenever they started using that, to the point where the Shanghai Hospital then started saying this is like an official treatment because of its effectiveness. And, they were bringing vitamin C in by the truckloads to this hospital. And then other doctors in the US, in both New York City and I believe California, started using a combination of zinc with vitamin C. And zinc is also really critical for immune function. Zinc is necessary for the production or creation, of immune cells. So, again, zinc is something that almost all of my clients are deficient in, whether they're adults or children. Other nutrients are vitamin A, which has been found time and time again. I read one study or remark that was even done, made, I think in the 1960s, where a doctor stated that vitamin A is the one nutrient that is classically deficient in patients who have compromised immune function and who have illnesses, whether it's at the time it was measles and so forth. So definitely I learned about the benefits of vitamin A whenever working on healing my daughter and so forth. And it's not one we hear as much about. We always tend to hear about vitamin C and zinc and so forth. And of course, vitamin D, huge for immune function, to the point where there's a study, and you can find that in my blog article. I posted the study below, that vitamin D was found to be more effective than the flu shot in preventing getting a flu during flu season. So those are 4 key nutrients that you really want to look at, that you're making sure you're getting that in your diet. And also that you want to make sure you're getting lots of sunshine, obviously because of vitamin D. And if you live in an area where you're not getting enough sunshine, or you're indoors working, you really want to make sure you're getting that vitamin D. And that's what I got thinking in terms of what we're not talking about, is we're not talking about why we're more nutrient deficient. And you'll see if you hop on my blog that vitamin A and vitamin C and particularly zinc, a lot of these come vitamin A is some of these you can really get from organ meats and so forth, stuff that we just consider totally disgusting now. We don't eat that anymore. And our diet itself is just very rich with processed food. So the other 2 things I want to talk about that are macronutrients that really don't get enough attention, if you will, when it comes to addressing immunity, right? We get talking about micronutrients and vitamin C and all this stuff. We don't talk about fats. So omega-3s we've heard about often being really intimately connected to brain health and immunity. However, fats in general, so saturated fats, which we also need, right? Fats help to transport your fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K. So you want to make sure you're getting enough fats, and then also protein. I see that a lot where there's immune issues and the person is not getting enough protein in their diet and they're constantly sick. And proteins are not only the building blocks for our tissue and our skeleton and all that other stuff. Proteins make antibodies, right, to fight those infections. They make enzymes, and they are extremely important to actually repair and aid in the healing process. So don't underestimate the importance of protein. So that's the stuff you really want to nourish with in terms of, really supporting a healthy immune system. The other thing you really want to do is you want to focus on addressing what is kind of acting as a anti-nutrient, or something that's increasing inflammation, that's increasing mucus, which is definitely what we don't want with a virus that's causing issues with breathing and lungs and so forth. So number 1, sugar, because 1 tablespoon or teaspoon, I should say, of sugar depletes the immune system for several hours. And again, if you hop on my blog, you will find more information than you want on the toxic effects of sugar that goes so much further than weight gain and, children feeling hyper, jittery, and so forth. It's an anti-nutrient. It uses all the nutrients that you're trying to nourish yourself with. All of those nutrients are used to metabolize the negative effects of sugar. Dairy. If you're a big dairy consumer, or if you have a child or someone who consumes dairy, particularly if they are prone to throat, nose, ear infections, asthma, allergies, respiratory issues, anything like that, if they're on any kind of inhalers, I would cut out dairy. It's the first thing that nutritionists and doctors, naturopathic doctors and functional medicine doctors recommend when there's asthma. and issues with mucus. So you do not want to create more mucus and stress, if you will, and inflammation, particularly for the respiratory system during, an illness that's floating around that affects that particular system. And gluten, I'm just going to touch on. I don't want to get on the gluten bandwagon because I'm not saying gluten is bad for everybody. It totally depends, and it depends on the quality and is it, like non-GMO and so forth, but it can be extremely inflammatory. And if you have a child that's already struggling with brain health, whether that's with learning and behavior, gluten often is a factor with a lot of my clients, and the gluten can really help to, eliminating that can really help to bring down the inflammation. So the big thing is what you want to do is you want to support those vulnerable systems in the body. You want to, the systems that are is particularly essential for guarding us against illness or protecting us from, if we do get sick, that it's not very severe. We don't end up hospitalized. And that means addressing the immune gut connection. So many of you know this already, but 70% of our immune system is in our gut. Our gut bacteria is like a universe. It's amazing. It does so much in terms of regulating hormones, making neurotransmitters, even helping with the synthesis of vitamins, and so much else. And so there's 100 million neurons in your gut lining. And so that literally is your second brain. And also the gut bacteria, right? Your immune system, you can see how that's all linked, and then how if there's infections, why that can affect mental health and cognition and so forth. So the first thing that you want to do, obviously, which I've talked about, is you want to nourish the nervous system, the immune system, and so forth in the gut. You want to eliminate anti-nutrients or irritants. And the third thing is you want to heal the gut, because when you heal the gut, you support the immune system. That's basically what you're doing. You're also helping to protect the brain and the body and so forth from all kinds of stuff. So just to kind of really simple break it down in terms of what you can do to heal the gut. As I said, you want to nourish first, then you want to remove irritants or foods that are inflammatory. Then you want to add in, and what you want to add in is ferments, which are loaded with good bacteria, as well as enzymes, and it's detoxifying and all kinds of great stuff. And ferments, again, are something that our grandparents ate all the time. When they pickled their food, it wasn't with vinegar, it was with a brine made of salt and water, which caused fermentation. And so, we talk about probiotics, but like ferments, they're eating this all winter. So add that into your diet or your child's diet. And the second thing is bone broth. Again, another staple in our diet. Years ago, right? Like for eternity before we started relying on like canned soup and soup stocks and so forth that were made in stores or factories, I should say. And so bone broth is packed with minerals. It's packed with collagen, glutamine, all kinds of stuff that helps to heal the gut lining, which is damaged by our very processed food, world that we live in. And also helps to act as a barrier so that pathogens and other toxins and so forth can't actually get into the bloodstream, and then it's just removed via the colon. And so really simple way to mix this up is make a soup, toss in, obviously make it with bone broth, and then, add in some mushrooms, some onions, some garlic, some ginger, maybe some dark leafy greens, and you have a really good, nice immune supportive soup. And then you can have some ferments on the side or whatever. Some people toss them in, but I don't particularly enjoy that. And then add in other things like antioxidants. So we always think about berries when we hear about antioxidants. For sure, go for the berries. But other antioxidants that we often overlook are spices like turmeric, cinnamon, cloves. The list goes on, and that is as well on my blog. So the other thing you want to do is you want to support the nervous system. The nervous system, right, affects, like it's connected to every other organ and tissue and so forth in the body. And when we are stressed and in crisis, which we all are right now to varying degrees for all kinds of different reasons, you want to make sure that you are taking yourself out of fight or flight mode, which I talked about last week a little bit. So I won't go into that too much, but meditating, deep breathing, like Kundalini breathing, Wim Hof breathing are really, really helpful for calming down that central nervous system so that you're not getting like a massive surge in stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Lastly, or finally, I should say, if you are kind of looking for, okay, immune support in a nutshell, basically lots of vegetables, because then you're going to hit all your different nutrients that I talked about, assorted, eat the rainbow, literally those phytonutrients in there. Don't forget your fats, both unsaturated and saturated fats are great. Saturated fats are only a problem when we're eating really high carb, high glycemic foods with lots of sugar. That's what causes it to become LDL cholesterol, the cholesterol we don't want. Protein, right? Good, clean protein. Beef, chicken, oily, all that oily fish and so forth, bone broth and ferment. And of course, I've mentioned some food and so forth, and sleep, relax, breathe, do yoga, connect with friends and so forth. So that's basically what I'm doing with my family to nourish our immune system, to support our immune system. And what I feel is really missing in terms of what we're not talking about with the COVID-19 and with why, what creates someone to be immune compromised in the first place, right? And for sure, like there's people who have cancer and so forth, but we as a society are struggling with our health and our immune systems at much younger ages than we ever have before. Like the rate of diabetes among children is just crazy, which we never saw before, and not type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So we need to really look at our diet and our roots, what foods, and that's one thing that really fascinated me. Actually, I have the book Nourishing Traditions, and so that's written by Sally Fallon, and that book was so fascinating for me when I found out, like, one of the problems of why kids, and not just kids, but adults, everyone is struggling with their health, is we've taken out certain staples that were part of a nourishing diet that sustained us for centuries. And, I've mentioned some of those things today, like ferments, like bone broth, like vegetables, all that type of stuff. And we've not only taken that out, but we've added in processed food, which is more like a food-like substance. It's so processed, there's hardly any nutrients left in it, very calorie dense, but not nutrient dense like the foods our ancestors were eating. So let me know what you're doing in the comments below in terms of to support your family's immune system, to reduce stress levels. Are you worried about the COVID-19? Let me hear your ideas. I'm going to try to read through them and reply and so forth. So thanks for watching.